So welcome to all the participants coming in from our live streaming event. I'm here with Dr. Peter Diamandis. And Dr. Peter Diamandis brought entrepreneurship to space travel. He's an MD from Harvard Medical School. He's an international pioneer in the fields of innovation, incentive competitions, and commercial space travel. We're so pleased and proud to have Dr. Diamandis here on the Ark. Welcome, Peter.
Grace, a pleasure to be here with you and everybody else.
So let's start with, what are the problems we're trying to solve in medicine that you're really excited about?
So there's a number of problems. I mean, if you stop and you think about the notion of what is the end goal of medicine, what's the end goal for all of us? It is to live a long and healthy life. And then it's everything that goes along with that. It's interesting that I remember when I was in medical school, I was watching a TV show about sea animals, and it noted that some of these whales and sharks and turtles live multi-hundred-year lifespans. And I remember thinking to myself, if they can, why can't we? And I said, this is a hardware and software problem. And it's something which I think ultimately is a solvable problem if we look at age as a disease and how do we cure aging. And so that's the big long-term idea. That's the idea that gets me excited. It's my, as you know, we discuss in Abundance 360 and Abundance 360 Digital and Exponential Advantage, this idea of having a moonshot. And my near-term moonshot is, how do we add 30 to 40 healthy years onto a person's life? So we make 100 years old and use 60. My longer term moonshot is, how do we really make life indefinite? What my dear friend Ray Kurzweil calls reaching longevity escape velocity, which means that for every year that you're alive, the technology exists to add another year onto your life so that you're perpetually, your horizon continues in front of you. So, the question becomes, what are the elements involved in all of that? That's one set of healthcare areas I'm interested in, and my tools that I use to attack that are pretty much, Grace, focused on genomics and stem cell sciences, or cellular therapeutics, so to speak. Mm-hmm. The second area is, how do we reduce the cost of healthcare itself, which I would divide into diagnostics and therapeutics and intervention. And here, I think we've got a huge amount of potential. I think the existing systems around the world are fundamentally broken. My belief is that artificial intelligence and sensors and robotics eventually will make it such that each of us is having our bodies monitored 24/7 for a set of parameters that are most indicative. It's heart rate, blood pressure, oxygenation, vitamin levels, glucose levels, whatever it might be. And that information is being uploaded to the cloud, and an AI, your AI, effectively is monitoring your health status minute to minute. And from your genomic data, you know what drugs do work for you, what drugs don't specifically work for you. You know what foods are good for you to eat, what foods are not good for you to eat. I mean, each of us is running a 3.2 billion letter genetic code that makes you, and me, and each of us have different elements that are ideal for our physiology, and that is knowable in the long term. So I think about this. I think about the notion that I fly a couple of airplanes, and I have a couple of Tesla cars, and all those vehicles have hundreds of sensors and hundreds of microprocessors monitoring data all the time. And if anything is even the slightest bit out of parameter, I know about it. And in some cases, a larger system knows about it. I remember getting a call from Tesla saying, there's a small backup battery in your car that's running low and want to come out and change it. And I was like, that was cool. I knew nothing about it, but, sort of Big Brother is watching out for me. GE has jet engines that are vital to an airplane's, safety, especially when you are flying transatlantic with what's called ETOPS capability, and those GE jet engines are transmitting a terabyte of data on a typical flight, and so it's transmitting all the temperatures, all the vibrations to a GE headquarters that is looking and saying, okay, look, this parameter is a little bit off. Let's follow that, and let's have a crew when the airplane lands to fix it before the airplane takes off again. But that's not the way medicine's today. Today, medicine is retrospective, it's reactive, it is by no means personalized. And when you end up in the hospital with a problem, you may have had that problem for weeks or months or years and didn't know about it. So the question is, how do we flip the model and be monitoring you constantly such that in advance of any damage, you are, or in advance of even the damage beginning, you have notice and you're protecting yourself against that. So medicine becomes preventative and predictive and fully personalized based upon your genome, based upon your day-to-day activities. So that's a quick overview.
So that brings up, I guess, three key questions, which is one, the capacity to synthesize, not just as medicos ourselves, but, our mental ability to bring all that system data together to say, predictively, this is where you're going wrong. That seems to be quite a challenge, and yet that seems also to be being replaced by AI. Mm-hmm. Radiologists, for example, pathologists, they're concerned about what the future will look like for their jobs. What are your thoughts?
I think that we are unable to process even a fraction of the data we get, right? There are some 8,000 journal articles, I think, written per day. At best, a physician might consume a dozen or so. I've got to check that number. Regardless, it doesn't matter. The point is, an artificial intelligence can consume every journal article, can be looking at the latest data of research and be able to bring forward to either the physician or to the patient the most important information that exists on the planet right then and there. I know at HLI's health nucleus, we generate 150 gigabytes of data about an individual during a visit, which is an insane amount of information.
Yeah. How can anyone possibly do that? Even if they upload their capacity to process into the computer, we integrate biological and artificial intelligence. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then the second question is, does this change the nature of healthcare delivery? We're talking about drones currently going into the field, so we're changing the geographic distribution of healthcare. Does it change the way that we have hospitals, bringing that technology into the home?
So I think that it is going to change the geographic nature of healthcare. I think healthcare becomes something that is always happening. I think healthcare is continuous. I think healthcare is, it's just a constant, I imagine in the not too distant future, again, we are being monitored by a set of sensors and networks and AIs that are measuring our critical parameters 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You will give your AI permission to look at what you're eating, to have your genome sequence, to be analyzing your microbiome from your toilet, from looking at your blood chemistries, monitoring all your physiology, looking at geographically where you've been. Have there been toxins in that region? Was there an E. coli breakout reported at that restaurant anytime in the last year? All kinds of crazy information that's fully integrated, the weather, the temperature, and all that information is creating a integrated, vibrant data map that is able to pull information in a fashion that is impossible in the episodic, really data-less world that we live in today. But this future I speak about isn't, more than 5 years from now. It's happening right now. There's a whole host of companies involved in this out of Apple and Google and Samsung and Facebook and some of my companies as well. And there's, it's a I think healthcare is I think, $6 to $10 trillion industry. And the old healthcare system is going to just collapse, be gone. And the cost of diagnostics will very quickly head towards zero. And then the question is, what are we doing from a therapeutic standpoint? Then we'll get to a question of what do doctors do, but that's a different question. On a therapeutic standpoint, I think we're going to start to see robots entering the surgical field a lot more. We have Da Vinci right now, but beyond that, we're going to start to see robots that are share a common AI database. So what do I mean by that? Imagine building a surgical robot, a robot that's got the dexterity, the sensors, the imaging systems far better than humans. And that exists today, right? There are robot surgical systems that have that right now. Many of them today are being driven by humans, but they can be easily driven by AIs. Now, imagine that an AI does a surgery and sees a arterial venous malformation that's never been seen before, and it uploads that imagery and how it tackles it. Maybe it brings a human in to help in an imaginative form the first time. But then every other AI in the world being driven by that robot operating system has now seen that same surgical procedure. So pretty soon, over the course of years, a robotic operating system has millions and millions and millions of exact cases in its memory banks and has seen, 1,000 or 1,000,000 times more than any human surgeon has done. And the cost of surgery then effectively goes to the cost of the equipment, amortization, and the cost of electricity, which is like, car payments.
So what does happen to the doctor in that relationship? Or in that
play a lot of golf. So I had a situation which I found very fascinating. My father passed away last year, and he had been hospitalized 2 or 3 times the years leading up to that. And I remember in the hospital, it was a pretty sad situation, and one that was different than I remembered when I went to medical school, 25 years earlier. And it was one in which, there was an orthopedist worrying about his broken pelvis. There was a cardiologist worrying about his atrial fib. There was a neurologist working on, thinking about his dementia. And there were all these specialists, but nobody was looking at him as a person. There was, everybody's so damn busy running around, filling out insurance forms and paperwork and doing all that. No one is being a doctor. So I think that the opportunity to have the human-to-human realities and reactions and interactions and caring return is an important part of the future of medicine, where AIs and robots are doing a lot of the paperwork or the hard work, whatever. But listen, medicine is going to transform, just like farming transformed, just like everything. I think medicine and education is the 2 fields that are going to be complete and totally transformed in the near future.
So is this the importance of entrepreneurship? So something like Exponential Advantage, can you see that medical personnel would actually get a lot out of a program like this?
Yeah, so interesting. Let me mention what we're doing with Exponential Advantage. I was approached by Success Magazine, which is a phenomenal magazine that really profiles very successful people. I'm very honored to have been on the cover twice. And they had seen the work that I've been doing in teaching this. I run a program called Abundance 360 every year. It's capped at 300 CEOs, and I've committed to running Abundance 360 for 25 years. So we're 5 years into this. And for 3 days at the beginning of January, I coach those CEOs on the technologies going from deceptive to disruptive. We talk about the convergence of different technologies and creating mindsets and moonshots and so forth. And I can't provide it to everybody. We're capped out. We're sold out a year in advance on this. And so Success approached me about creating a digital program, and we created a program called Exponential Advantage. It's 8 hours of content. And I have sat down and created, I spent 6 months really creating the curriculum to teach the mindsets and the tools that people can use to really think about all these exponential ways of thinking. So we will, if anybody goes and participates and gets the program, it's about over the course of 8 weeks that the program is delivered to you. It's extremely interactive. During as you're doing the program, we'll have live webinars like this, and my answering questions to the program participants. But it's really asking you and giving you insights about critically important things, and asking you the questions to analyze how does this impact you and your business. I mean, one of the things I think a lot about is mindsets, and one of the mindsets that's critically important is are you driven by your passion? And I talk about this notion of an MTP, a massively transformative purpose. Like, what is your purpose on this planet? What are you going to drive and do more than anything else in the world? And unfortunately, I don't care how smart and successful people are. A lot of people, and typically in any group, half the people really don't have their MTP, don't know what their mission or purpose in life is. And they could be successful by something that they've stumbled into or inherited or happen to create, but it's not waking them up and wow, what an amazing day. I'm so excited to go and change the world today. And so we talk about the power of having a massively transformative purpose. I spend time helping you figure out what that is for yourself. And then within that MTP, how do you create a moonshot, right? Where the rest of the world is going 10% bigger, right? If you're in the medical field, maybe it's 10% more patients, maybe it's 10% more revenues, maybe it's 10% lower costs, maybe it's 10% more time off. I don't know, but whatever it is, a person can get 10% by just working Saturdays and Sundays or working harder, but that's not the point. The point is, in the moonshot, how do you go 10 times bigger, right? How do you actually figure out how to reinvent your field? And we talk about the kinds of moonshots I'm taking with human longevity, which is now the world's largest genome sequencing company in the world. My 18th company, which is in formation right now, called Cellularity, which is a stem cell and cellular therapeutics roll-up play, which I'm very excited about the impact of stem cells. I'll talk about I'm very honored to have friends and colleagues like Elon Musk and Larry Page and Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson, and look at their moonshots and what they're doing and how did they do it. And by analogy, you really give people an understanding of what a moonshot is, what are the steps you take to get there within the context of your MTP. So that's just one of the 8 modules. We talk about crowdsourcing, how to use the crowd to fund your ideas, like with Indiegogo and Kickstarter, how to use the crowd to shape your ideas, how to use the crowd to give you data, how to use the crowd in a whole range of areas. And we'll spend a module or two talking about all the exponential technologies, doing a deep dive into artificial intelligence, not trying to teach anybody to be a programmer, but what does AI really mean? Where is it today and where is it going? And, how do you skate to where the puck's going to be in AI or 3D printing or synthetic biology? All of these fields are changing the practice of medicine, healthcare, everything.
So for all the people listening to this, if you want a taster of how passionate and how motivating Peter can be, he did an amazing webinar that was just recently broadcast. In fact, this week I saw it, and I've been listening to you and Tony Robbins for years. And I was just blown away by the things I took away from it. So if you guys want to watch it again, it's on diamandislive.com. That's diamandislive.com. And they'll just give you just a taster, and you just take so much out of it. I love that thing that you talked about, when you 10 times, like I think Astrid Teller said it inside the video, 10 times in a problem or a solution, you're going to completely think about it in an entirely different way.
You're forced to. I mean, if you're 10%, like I said, is a little bit different. To go 10 times, which is 100-fold better than 10%, you have to throw away everything you have. You have to kill what you've been doing and really start again with a clean sheet of paper. And there's incredible freedom in doing that, right? I use Tesla as a great example. As you know, there's no way that Ford or, pick your favorite car company was going to build the Tesla the way Elon did, because he had the benefit of no legacy, of no existing workforce or assets. He could start with a clean sheet of paper and invent what was going to be created. And it's an amazing vehicle as a result of that. And we see that with Amazon, we see that with Netflix, we see that with all kinds, Uber, incredible companies.
So I've got some community questions for you now. So it's a shout out to the Startup Leadership Program, which is a global entrepreneurship community of leaders, people starting up their businesses, learning how to basically become a better leader. So this question is from Genevieve Laville from O10-8, a startup building a financial services platform for farmers. And she asks, Peter, with the benefit of abundant mindsets, when and how can we expect to solve the world's largest problems like poverty and hunger?
Yeah, so really important. Thank you for your question. And I think about food a lot, not just because I'm hungry, but I think of food and, the basic needs of humans around the world, which are water, energy, food, shelter, healthcare, education, information, all these things. Mm-hmm. And my first book, which is called Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think, talks about the areas of food production. And I guess I'd like to point out that we have been effectively, what is food? Food is energy from the sun coming in as photons, hits the Earth's surface. Photosynthesis turns it into molecules, proteins, carbohydrates, and such, and then we take that up the food chain and we consume it at some point. So that process, on the whole, is actually very inefficient, where you grow an entire cow to get the milk, or to get its muscle, or its hide. And when you can let go of that, preconceived notion that it always has to be the way it's been, what's incredible right now is companies that I know of that are basically creating proteins for consumption, but are doing it in the lab with the potential to generate meat and meat-like substances far healthier than the best grass-fed meats. And, I know Australia is that's a big industry for Australia, and but it's a concept that is pretty transformational when you think about it, because fully 1/3 of the Earth's non-ice landmass is dedicated to livestock. And if you're able to return that landmass and reduce the incredible amount of water and energy needed and the amount of methane and CO2 produced, it's huge. Other ideas are, today the average meal that we eat travels, I think the last estimate I saw was 1,600 food miles to get to your plate, meaning the beef on your plate may have come from Argentina, the wine from Australia, whatever the case might be. And we don't think anything of that, but a significant amount of the cost of food is the transportation and the storage of food. There is work going on right now in what's called urban or vertical farming. So instead of having it be in the plains of Idaho, here in LA, it's maybe in downtown LA where there are vertical farms. These vertical farms are generating light at the perfect frequency for whatever's being grown. And that light is not for a typical 8-hour winter day. That light is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so it is being optimized for the growth, the pH, everything that's in the soil is perfect. And you can get, 3 to 10 times the yield of a typical piece of farmland. So, and then not have to, have the meal transport 1,600 miles or transported, a half a mile. So there's different ways to reinvent food and food production and food transportation and storage and so forth. Another interesting way is that I'm giving sort of outline examples to expand people's thinking about this, is I want you to imagine I come home from a day, I've had some exercising, I have a treadmill. I normally do my
yeah, I expected you to take a meeting
I know.
on me.
I was. Greg set it up here. Otherwise, I should have said for me to take this on my treadmill so I could log an extra couple of miles today. But the notion is when I go home, I'm hungry. I eat whatever's there. Imagine if instead my blood chemistries are being measured, my protein levels, vitamin D levels, glucose levels, all of that's being measured, and a 3D printed protein bar with exactly what my body needs in that moment is actually produced for me. Right? So it is like perfect delivery of what is required versus me just saying I'm thirsty or I'm hungry, which is a very, low parameter for fidelity.
So listening to that, it strikes me that the biggest generatable, I guess, resource is time saved. Because can you imagine if we could save all that time that is usually yielding water collection and food resourcing and transportation? You can recoup that and refocus people onto other problems that also matter.
Well, and that's exactly right. I mean, that's what technology effectively does. It saves time. Each of us, I don't care who you are, where you were born, we're all born with the same 24 hours a day, 7 days in a week. And when you want to save time, it gets expensive at different levels, right? Yeah. So I'm very lucky and very happy. I have a small jet aircraft that I fly around the western side of the United States, and that saves me an hour at LAX. So that's an hour saved. I pay dearly for that hour saved, but it's Google all saves us time. It used to be you'd have to get in your car or on your bicycle and go to the library and hope they had the books, or maybe take a week to order the books you need, do the research, write the paper. Now, 5 clicks later, you've got all the data in front of you. And technology ultimately is about saving time.
So you mentioned your book, and I think that this is a great time to mention your latest book, which I actually saw Julian Guthrie's interview with you, and that's why I expected you to be on a treadmill. So that's called How to Make a Spaceship. For those people watching, fantastic read. And it segues nicely into my next question, which is really the role of government in our innovation. So I have a dear friend called Steve Glaveski, and he's the CEO of Collective Campus and something that I think you'll really like, Peter, called an initiative called Lemonade Stand, which teaches concepts of entrepreneurship and exponential technologies to children. So yesterday there were a bunch of kids running around with AI headsets and all that. Like VR headsets. It was awesome, right? So what are your thoughts on how government and startups navigate innovation, particularly exponential innovation?
First of all, thank you. The book is not my book. I've written 2 books, Abundance and Bold. This is a book by Julian Guthrie. It's my biography. She wrote, it follows me from age 9 through the winning of the X Prize and tells the X Prize story. It's won numerous awards, and it's on the New York Times bestseller list. It's an amazing book. The foreword is by Richard Branson and the afterword by Stephen Hawking. So pretty cool dudes, which I'm proud of. So exponential technology is going to make it difficult for governments and even difficult for large corporations. I think entrepreneurs will have the easiest job of it. So the challenge is that most governments are in the business of trying to keep the world stable, meaning most of us like to know that when we wake up in the morning, the world is the same way it was the day before, that nothing has radically changed. We like stability. We don't like change. But the fact of the matter is exponential technologies are changing at an extraordinary rate. I put out a blog every Sunday. And if anybody's interested, if you go to just my website, which is diamandis.com, diamandis.com, you can sign up for the blog. And I spend a lot of time every week writing that blog. And in the first week of January, I reviewed all the technology breakthroughs for 2016 and grouped them into 10 categories, and then presented what were this incredible pace of change. And it was palpably different this year than past years. And we are, the only constant is change, and the rate of change is increasing. And so government's going to have a hard time of that. A lot of the work that I do is with Singularity University, which I'm very proud of. If anybody's not heard of Singularity University, Google it. It's singularityU.org. Ray Kurzweil and I started the university now 9 years ago. And it teaches graduate students and executives about exponential tech. And it's based in Silicon Valley at NASA's Moffett Field. And Rob Nail, who's the CEO, and I have been having conversations with the World Economic Forum about potentially creating a program on exponential leadership for heads of state, for governments. Because I don't think governments truly understand what's coming down the pike. The conversation I have with a lot of entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, a lot of the top investors, go something like, most people have no idea what's about to hit. And it really is game changing, the implications of machine learning and AI and robotics and eventually nanotechnology. All these things are going to transform every element of our lives: how we raise our kids, how we work, how we govern. And governments hold on to stability, but technology is going up like this, so there's going to be some issues. Technological socialism, where technology is taking care of us, technological unemployment, all of those things we're going to have conversations about UBI, which is effectively the government giving everybody a monthly check so they could be living. And so a lot of change coming. Entrepreneurs can thrive on this, and that's what I teach in Exponential Advantage, which is, as an entrepreneur, you're not attached to all these assets or the past, whatever. And we live in a world where, as an entrepreneur, what do you need access to fulfill? I mean, if you've got an idea, if you've got your own moonshot, if you have your own passion, that's really what you need. There's plenty of capital out there. There was some $15 billion in crowdfunding in 2015. More expertise, more computational power. I mean, whatever you need, it's there.
It's there, yeah. So I think we've touched through the conversation on it. It strikes me that science in itself as a foundation for healthcare and medicine is kind of, at the moment with its limitations, more a retrospective kind of art. So our next community question is from Abazar Lakdawala, who's the founder of Proexome, a company specializing in liquid biopsy assays. And the question is, why do medical technologies take such a long time to realize? What's your feeling about Google's and Apple's initiatives, for example, in the life sciences area? Have they stumbled, and why?
So I don't think I don't think these large giants have stumbled. I think the reality is that they continue to work. You may well know Calico is a multi-billion-dollar investment under Alphabet's umbrella. And, let's remember that there is, in all startups, there's a 90% mortality rate and a 10%, but all we need is one company to succeed, one company to experiment and do it right. We don't need every company to succeed. There is, more opportunity. I believe that this next 10 years, this next decade, is effectively going to be the equivalent of the 1990s for the internet. The next decade is going to be that massive capital growth and investment opportunity and company formation in the biotech space. I think liquid biopsies and such are going to be extraordinary, especially the many companies that are entering this arena. There will be failures, but all it takes is for one to show what is possible. Now, On the regulatory front, one of the advantages that we have is while everybody does look to the FDA, the Federal Food and Drug Administration of the United States, is very slow, and they unfortunately have a scarcity mindset in the following. The FDA measures if you release a drug and someone dies, there's a congressional investigation, and the person who approved that drug is in trouble, and the company that offered that drug is in trouble, and it's a witch hunt that follows. What isn't measured are all the lives lost by inaction when drugs are not tested. So I know part of the work I'm doing is how do we change that mindset? How do we change that methodology that is much more allowing for an informed patient to take the risks? We also have the fact that there are many jurisdictions around the world. So for example, I mentioned stem cell work, the company I'm working on. So we are in the midst of looking at partnering or acquiring stem cell clinics around the planet, many of which who are already approved by their national government. And if you're able to standardize the cellular therapeutics, the stem cells and so forth that are being offered, and collect data for thousands and thousands of patients, even if it isn't in the United States, that data is useful to demonstrate and say, listen, there is true efficacy, there is low mortality, morbidity, and the upside is worth it. So I think data is going, our ability to collect data and analyze data and put AI, machine learning on top of data is going to break the back of this slow approval cycle.
So the last question from the community is again from Steve, because he had such a great question. I really wanted to borrow it from him, which was, you're known for optimism and infectious energy, but I imagine that most human beings like you are not without your fears. So, and he asked, what's your greatest fear? Does fear sit in the opposite dimension to abundance thinking? Can you be both abundant and yet fearful?
So thank you for the question. And let me just take a moment, and I'll come back to that question, but let me just talk about the mindset element here. As humans, we evolved, and our brain, the very limited neocortex that we have, and our reptilian brain, and all of that evolved over the course of millions of years ago, right? And our brain adapted basically for survival. And if you missed a piece of negative information in your environment, like a rustle in the leaves is a lion and not the wind, or a crack on the ground is a snake and not a stick, you were dead. Your genes were out of the gene pool. So we evolved this red alert system, the amygdala, which is about the size of an almond or your thumb, and your temporal lobe, and everything we see and everything we hear goes to the amygdala first, puts you on red alert. And so consequently, evolutionarily, we pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news. And we don't realize that cognitive bias. We have all these cognitive biases, these shortcuts that the brain uses on how we analyze information. Confirmation bias, negativity bias, all kinds of different things. And the news media takes advantage of this. And so I like to joke that the CNN is the crisis news network, or the constantly negative news network, and it delivers 10-to-1 negative news for positive news. And there's a reason. They have a business. Their job is your eyeballs to their advertisers. And if they were a good news network, you would not be watching. You hear a plane crash and, or fire, or, Dow Jones plummeting, or shotgun, whatever the case, and boom, you're glued in. And in a world of, these devices being cameras everywhere, there's always something going on. And we romanticize the good old days, right? The good old days when life was brutish and short, and there was polio, and, you didn't survive past the mean age of 45. That's BS. And so the negative information bombards us, and your mindset is critically important. what you let into your brain colors your mindset. And so I don't watch the news. I mean, I can't avoid it if I'm walking through a terminal or whatever the case, and I will gawk at the screen like everybody else does. If there's a, CNN news alert, whatever it might be, it's almost reflexive in that regard. But I don't go and spend hours watching the news. For me, I get hours a day back by not doing that. And so that helps me remain optimistic. Now going to the question of what am I worried about? I'm worried about overregulation. I'm worried about, I believe we're heading towards this world of abundance where the needs of every man, woman, and child will be met. And it's an extraordinary world. It's a world of what we've had in the past. It's a world of a have and the majority of the world of have-nots, right? We had the king and the queen, and everybody else was the serfs supporting them. And we're going to a world now of haves where everybody, I don't care who you are on the planet, you've got access to Google, the world's information, you have access to solar, you have access to clean water, you have food, you have healthcare, you have education, healthcare and education being delivered ubiquitously at the highest level possible by AI. And so we'll have a world of haves, and yes, we'll have some super haves. We'll have those that maybe live indefinitely, some have gone to Mars, whatever it might be. But I'd rather have that world of haves and a few super haves than the world of haves and all these have-nots. So I worry about overregulation, and I worry about the bridge to abundance. And the work I do at Singularity University and the X Prize is all around how do we build this bridge to abundance? How do we navigate the next 20 years? Abundance 360 is part of that. Exponential Advantage is part of that, and so forth.
So I wanted to end by saying, thank you so much for Abundance 360, because every year the level of conversation just goes up and up.
This year's going to be awesome.
I know, I can't wait. Actually, I was going to say, I've got the timesheet here. I'll see you in a couple of days. And, the quality of people that you've got talking to us. Jake Knapp from Google Ventures, who of course wrote the book on Sprint, Jeff Holden, the Chief Product Officer from Uber. I can't wait. I mean, last year I got to meet with Ray and I talked to him about nanorobotics, and he was like, come to Singularity University, be the person that actually talks about it. So I wanted to ask you a really great broadening question, which is that, how do you expect, how do you advise us as healthcare practitioners now to get ready for this future of medicine? What's the best way that we can actually get out there and prepare ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's an important question. And first of all, it goes back to what's your MTP? I mean, I always take it back to what are you most passionate about, right? Because anything you do that's big and bold is going to be hard. And if it's driven by the emotional passion in your heart and soul, fantastic. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, once you have that, is what's your moonshot? And then how do you harness all of these technologies, machine learning, genomics, cellular therapeutics, robotics, all those things to help accelerate your moonshot? And I think when you've got that, when you've got a star you're aiming at, if there is a tsunami of change coming, you can surf on top of that tsunami to get to your goal versus being crushed by it. And as I've mentioned, a lot of this conversation, a lot of this teaching, a lot of this thinking is an exponential advantage. So I hope folks will consider joining me on that journey. So
my MTP is that I want healthcare to be available anytime, everywhere. And because I had a little bit of surgical residency through my medical training in neurosurgery, I want that to be something that's available to everywhere, like everyone. Neurosurgery is a very typically first world kind of, service. Why not make it massively available? So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your journey and the ability to basically help us all find our MTPs. Guys who's listening, this will be replayed. I will put the name of Peter's biography there. Definitely check out diamandislife.com. You'll see Tony and Peter just absolutely knocking it out of the park.
Tony Robbins is such an amazing friend.
And Exponential